Esta es la fuente, alimenta a Huancayo, casi 500.000 de una población que son usuarios de agua potable.
La preocupación de las autoridades de Junín, de Huancayo, de otras instituciones.
Hace 10 años yo vine primera vez a este nevado. Todo lo que ves, la parte negra que está después por encima de la laguna, toda esta margen derecha, izquierda, esas rocas negras no se notaban, era puro nieve. Entonces nos damos cuenta de que está muy acelerado el avance de la desglaciación.
The purpose of this video is not to change anyone's mind about climate change, or to debate its existence. If you are still within the camp that doubts its existence, then regardless you are in for a rude awakening. This video is for the people that still look at climate change as an abstract concept, something that is real but too far away to be concerned about. A problem, but one for tomorrow. It doesn't take long to find examples of climate change in the present. Floods, heat waves, hurricanes, and melting glaciers have become more of a seasonal occurrence than the rare natural phenomenon that they once were. All of these recent disasters affect the water supply or completely destroy it. Water is such an underappreciated commodity in most of the world, while part of the world still struggles to have enough to drink. But what if that liquid coming from your sink were to dry up? What would you do? Call the water company? Check with your neighbors? Once it is established that there is no water anywhere, panic sets in. Back in March 2017, I found myself in Lima, Peru, where landslides caused by extreme rainfall in the north of the country cut off water access to the entire city for 5 days. The river Rimac swelled so much with dirt and waste that the water authority had to shut off all water lines until the surge had subsided. There was a slow, systematic realization that there was no water anywhere, as people flooded supermarkets and hoarded all the gallons and bottles of water that they could, not knowing when the tap might be turned on again. After 2 days, there was no bottled water left in the shelves of the stores in any part of the city. Riots broke out in outlying districts. Lines that lasted hours snaked along the streets, people dehydrated and sweating in hot summer sun, waiting to fill barrels instead of working, instead of being with their families. The city grinded to a full stop. It was a slow chaos that hit a climax on the 5th day as people nervously continued their Sunday, praying that the water would finally come back. And that night, some muddy drops began to flow. And life eventually went back to normal. And people forgot. This left a lasting impression on me. What will people do once there is no more water in a major city? How can we adapt as a people to water scarcity? Peru will be the 3rd most affected country by climate change in the world. Therefore, it serves as the perfect identifier or warning flag for the rest of the world. The first thing we did was take to the streets of Lima to see if people still remember that terrible drought and learn a little bit about their opinions on water.
Vino el huayco, nos quedamos todos sin agua, uy Dios mío, parecía el fin del mundo.
Efectivamente, yo viví la catástrofe en forma directa, los efectos de un niño costero agresivo en la ciudad de Trujillo.
Sí, cuando pasó los huaycos del 2017, varias gente necesitaba el agua y donaban, y en los supermercados ya se acababa el agua.
Ya que hemos pasado por una decadencia justamente a raíz del huayco que hubo último, no tuvimos agua como, ¿cuánto fue? ¿2 semanas? Casi un mes, cargando agua de diferentes sitios, trayendo agua, y el agua que venía era sucia, totalmente con barro, y estuvimos, imagínate, sin agua no puede hacer nada.
Considero que es muy importante el agua. Debemos tomar conciencia, ¿no?, ecológica de cuidar el agua. Es un recurso vital, es un recurso elemento. Gracias a ella es que estamos vivos, ¿no? Entonces el agua considero que es un recurso que debemos conservarla, cultivarla y no desperdiciarla.
Puedes vivir sin electricidad, pero sin agua no. Sin agua no se puede. Es lo que nosotros necesitamos. Y más que todo, como dice mi pareja aquí, eso se ha podido prevenir. Porque esto no viene de ahorita, eso ya viene de años. Estos huaycos no son de un año atrás, vienen de muchísimos años atrás.
Es indispensable, creo, para todos, porque sin agua creo que nadie puede vivir, y menos en estas épocas donde mucha gente, así lo vemos en una época moderna. Hay zonas, y más en el Perú, que es un país subdesarrollado, donde mayormente familias no tienen casi nada de agua, y valoran un litro, lo valoran bastante.
Everyone should be familiar by now with the catastrophes caused by climate change. The landslides in this case are a direct result of El Niño weather patterns. But with the rising temperatures of the Pacific due to climate change, their intensity will only grow. Peru is known for its cuisine, diverse landscapes, rich cultural history, and the monuments it left behind. However, what makes Peru especially unique is that it possesses over 70% of all the tropical glaciers in the world. These glaciers rest beneath the equator, and because of this, they are subject to much more solar radiation. Large portions of these once giant white behemoths that the local people still associate with their gods are disappearing. One in particular has lost more than 57% of its expansion, and scientists predict it will completely disappear within the next 15 years. The glacier is called Huaytapallana. It is a magnificent landscape about 3 hours outside the city of Huancayo. We traveled to Huancayo to get a gauge on how dire the situation was for not only one of the world's most beautiful, naturally occurring phenomenon, but also one of its most essential. One of the first people we met in Huancayo was Jacinto Arroyo. He works at the Geophysical Institute of Peru and was one of the first people to begin researching Huaytapallana.
La disminución de la superficie glacial también estaba relacionada un poco a lo que es el aumento de la temperatura del lugar. Tendencia que había tenido el glaciar desde 1950, ¿no? En aquellas épocas, con algunas fotografías aéreas que habían tomado, ¿no? Y demuestran que realmente el glaciar tenía un proceso, pues, ¿no? De pérdida. Aproximadamente de un área de casi 30 kilómetros cuadrados, llegó hasta un estado crítico más o menos de 14 kilómetros cuadrados. Por ejemplo, también hay unos cambios estacionales. Al final de la primavera, casi todo lo que habías acumulado lo pierdes. Y ahí es donde entra a tallar, ¿no? El agua que fluye de los glaciares. Como que mantiene esa capacidad todavía para alimentar de agua a toda la población. Hace 2 años había otro investigador también que había hecho un modelo social, ¿no? De qué ocurriría si desaparece el glaciar. Las personas, los habitantes, ¿permanecerían en el lugar o tendrían a desplazarse? Entonces él sacó su conclusión de que eso generaría un desplazamiento de las personas a otras ciudades.
We interviewed the people of Huancayo to see how their lives have been impacted by this melting glacier.
Tenemos racionalmente cortes, bueno, por 1, 2, 3 días, de hecho.
A partir de las 4 o 5 de la tarde el agua ya no llega a lo que es mi casa.
Bueno, yo soy de aquí de Huancayo y sí experimenté la escasez de agua, porque en mi casa solamente llega en las mañanas ese intervalo de 1 hora de la cantidad de agua que después ya se seca y ya no viene más. Y por la tarde media hora o algo así, pero algunas veces. Y es muy duro porque tenemos que con mi familia comprar así recipientes grandes para poder juntar agua, para poder solventarnos durante el día o durante la semana, que el tiempo que no venga el agua o no regrese el agua. Pero yo vi personas que tienen poder, pero para ellos todo el día hay agua, hasta también lo desperdician. Pero esa agua que utilizan también podrían utilizar las personas que les hace falta. Yo pienso que el agua debería de ser igualdad para todos.
So we took a trip to Huaytapallana to see just how bad the situation really is. Waking up at 6 a.m. to a city still covered in darkness and freezing the altitude's effects were obvious. Even before leaving the city of Huancayo, you are hit with dirt roads and gravel that would destroy a Honda Civic in seconds. Winding up the mountains, you can see the stark contrast between urban and rural poverty. There was also a surprising difference in the amount of garbage strewn across the streets. The higher we got up, the cleaner the rivers and streets were. Finally, as we reached where the trail began, we stood overlooking the valley in awe. Even walking several feet left or right, you quickly ran out of breath. The 4,000-meter air was paper thin. We were met at the entrance by a park ranger who explained to us the rules of the protected area. Although recent efforts have had an effect on cleaning the area up, it does not take one long to notice the existence of trash along the trail, mostly cigarette butts and broken bottles left by local shamans and people who come to this site to worship the glacier. They call it Apu and come to it asking for help with their ailments, love life, and desires. The place is also the site for Santiago Festival, one of the largest religious festivals in the area. This is a complex dilemma for the park staff because you want to let people practice their religion freely, but at the same time you don't want them to further contribute to the loss of the beauty. We made our own offering to Huaytapallana to protect us on our journey before embarking on the hardest part of the trek, and left some fruit and coca leaves in a crevice under a rock to show our respect to the glacier. As we moved up the trail, we quickly started to separate as each person found their own rhythm to walking. When trekking in high altitudes, it's important to keep a steady pace. It began to dawn on me where we were. The high Andes is a place unique in this world, with its own flora and fauna that seem like something out of a fairy tale. Our guide pointed to a now open and beautiful stretch of valley where just 10 years ago was completely covered by the glacier. Now it just hangs in a tiny corner, its ice draining several hundred meters into one of those bright blue lagoons. After dipping down and then hugging a trail that straddles the cliffs, we finally got to the foot of the glacier. As we stood next to this giant block of ice, it slowly began to flurry, and you could feel the cold radiating off its white surface. There really was a certain ancient energy to it, and as we gazed out upon our incredible surroundings, a silent shadow came over me. Climate change is not completely caused by humans, and neither is the melting of this glacier, but we do play a large role in its acceleration. I too have played a role in the rapid loss of this sacred mountain. We stopped for a minute to ask our guide his own thoughts on Huaytapallana and the situation at hand.
Huaytapallana viene de quechua, ¿no? Que huayta significa flores y payani en quechua o payana significa recojo de flores. Las personas, pobladores de aquí hacían eso, ¿no? Normalmente todas las cosas para los nacimientos, lo que son musgos, diferentes tipos de plantas, lo sacan de estas zonas de aquí. Este nevado va disminuyendo el nivel de nieve que tiene. Lamentablemente por el mismo ciclo biológico que tiene la Tierra, poco a poco este nevado va perdiendo su forma y se va derritiendo poco a poco. Es algo perjudicial para toda la región de Junín, ya que es una fuente de agua para nosotros, ¿no?
It was only about 7 years ago that the area had become a national park, and with that came park rangers to protect the area from throwing their garbage wherever they wanted. These rangers, with the help of local government, NGOs, and the local communities, began to successfully restore the area to a bit of its former natural beauty. They have removed thousands of pounds of garbage and have prevented any further significant damage to the area. Perhaps they have extended the life of the glacier for a bit longer, and with that, the use of its water. Probably the most beneficial project of them all was the planting of pine trees, quinoa crops, and other water-saving plants in the surrounding areas of the reserve and the city. These plants store such significant amounts of water during the rainy season that it can later be repurposed during the entire dry season from May to October. The pines provide a livelihood for the people of the small community of Acopalca directly underneath the glacier. the pines create a fertile habitat for a specific type of edible mushroom that contains a high amount of protein and other essential vitamins. We spoke to one of the former presidents of the Huaytapallana community to get his perspective on the work of Care Perú.
No tenía idea de lo que era el cambio climático. No teníamos idea de forestar o en conclusión sembrar agua. Veía por conveniente forestar eucalipto, ¿no? Que es una especie que consume bastante agua, pero la población le veía conveniente todo para combustible nada más. No les hacía falta, había poca demanda de necesidad del recurso hídrico, pero a pasar de los años ya hubo la pegada, ¿no? Y también esto ha sucedido a falta de orientación de profesionales o de entidades o de ONGs que nos orienten de cuán necesario es forestar para el futuro. Nosotros como comunidad y conjuntamente con las instituciones que Care Perú sigue al momento acompañándonos es generar o sembrar recursos hídricos para el futuro.
Water is a resource that, as a people, we may never fully appreciate until it is literally drained through our fingers. It is the foundation for all life on this planet, and its existence means whether a civilization progresses or falls apart. Wars will be fought over this resource in our lifetimes, and people in search of it will eventually become commonplace in some parts of the world. Again, it's hard to believe this without any type of reference or even know when this all could happen. Nations around the world must rush to cut carbon emissions, not only from their people, but also their corporations that emit the most. Some ideas on the table are subsidies for renewable energy, carbon taxes, and investing in carbon cleaning technology. A 1.5-degree increase is already inevitable, and these investments, although expensive, outweigh the risks of a 2-degree world.
La solución está en cada uno de nosotros, porque es más que nada por la educación que nos recibimos de la casa. Si es que nuestros padres nos enseñan a cómo cuidar el agua, desde pequeñitos hasta más grandes ya seguimos cuidando el agua. Pero hay personas que no enseñan así a sus hijos, ya de una manera que dicen, ya tengo agua, ¿para qué cuidarla? Por eso desde muy pequeños tenemos que enseñar a los niños a cómo cuidar el agua, porque todavía no estamos perdidos, o sea, que todavía podemos recuperar el agua. Es lo que yo pienso, que todavía podemos brindar agua a todas las personas que lo necesitan, pero todos tenemos que contribuir.
For the people of Huancayo, the threat of climate change is no longer an abstract reality. It is no longer an option to postpone it for another day. Thousands of people are already thirsty. The people of Huancayo, Acopalca, Cochas, and all the surrounding areas of Huaytapallana have all accepted this reality. They have stopped spending their time trying to deny it or find other explanations. They wake up every day and try to chase this glacier, racing to protect what remains of the foundation of their livelihoods.
Like, is any of this real or not?